Is there another God in the Bible? This could change your faith forever. Stop. What if everything you thought you knew about God was incomplete? Darkness lingers over the scriptures, concealing a mystery long ignored. For centuries, one truth has remained unshaken. There is only one God, the Alpha and Omega, the creator of all things. But hidden within ancient texts lies a disturbing question. Is he truly alone? Genesis whispers a contradiction. Let us make man in our image. Who was God speaking to? If he is the only divine being, then why does he speak in the plural? Some dismiss it as a metaphor, but what if the answer is far more unsettling? Scattered across scripture, fragments of a hidden presence emerge, a second divine figure obscured for millennia. If he exists, then what does it mean for everything we believe, and more importantly, who have we truly been worshipping all along? From the very first pages of Genesis, a whisper of uncertainty lingers beneath the surface of Scripture, an anomaly so subtle yet so profound that most overlook it entirely. But for those who dare to see beyond the familiar words, a disturbing question arises. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Genesis 1:26. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:22. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Genesis 11:7. Who is God speaking to? If he is the singular omnipotent creator, then why does he refer to himself in the plural? For centuries, theologians have struggled to explain these verses, offering theories of divine majesty, angelic counsels, or the foreshadowing of the Trinity. But none of these answers fully satisfies the unsettling implications buried in the text. In a book built upon absolute monotheism, these passages feel out of place, like echoes of a forgotten truth. And yet, they are not the only ones. Throughout the Old Testament, a mysterious figure emerges, one who speaks as God, acts with divine authority, yet remains distinct from the Almighty himself. A being who appears in burning bushes, wrestles with men, and pronounces judgment in the name of the Most High. This entity is no mere messenger. When he appears, those who see him react with fear and awe, believing they have stood before God himself. Yet paradoxically, he is also spoken of as separate from the divine. Consider Moses and the burning bush. The scripture states that the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush, Exodus 3:2. But as the passage continues, it is not an angel speaking, but God. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Exodus 3:6. Moses hides his face in terror, for he believes he has seen God. But how can an angel, an intermediary, claim to be God himself? The pattern repeats throughout Scripture. The angel of the Lord speaks to Abraham, Hagar, Gideon, and Samson's parents, not as a messenger, but as one who holds divine authority. Even more disturbing is what happens when people encounter him. In Judges 13:22, when Manoah and his wife see the angel of the Lord, they cry out in fear, believing they will die. "We have seen God," they exclaim. Yet how can they see God and live when Scripture explicitly states that no one can see his face and survive? There is something unsettling here, something buried beneath the words. If this being is not simply an angel, then what is he? Some have speculated that he is a pre-incarnate form of Christ. Others suggest he is a manifestation of God's power. But there is another, more chilling possibility, one that few dare to consider. Could it be that there is another divine figure hidden within the ancient texts, a being distinct from the Father, yet possessing the very essence of God? If so, what does that mean for everything we believe? The angel of the Lord were merely a celestial messenger, the answer would be simple. But Scripture does not allow for simple explanations. Time and time again, this figure steps beyond the role of a servant and into the realm of divinity itself. In Genesis 22, Abraham is prepared to sacrifice his son Isaac when suddenly the angel of the Lord calls out to him from heaven. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he commands. But what happens next is even more baffling. Instead of merely relaying a message from God, this angel speaks as if he himself is God. "Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." To whom was Isaac being offered? God or this angel? Why does he claim personal ownership over a sacrifice meant only for the Almighty? The pattern is repeated in Exodus 23, where God warns Israel of a being who will lead them through the wilderness. "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and bring you to the place I have prepared." But this is no ordinary angel. God commands, "Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your transgressions, for my name is in him." An angel with the authority to forgive sins. An angel who carries the very name of God within himself. This is not how Scripture describes angels. The prophets are clear. Only God forgives sins, and his name is not shared. And yet, here is a divine figure who speaks as God, acts as God, and is worshipped as God, but is somehow not God the Father. This paradox extends into the prophetic writings. In Zechariah 3, a vision unfolds in which Joshua the high priest stands accused by Satan. And who stands between them? Not God the Father, but the angel of the Lord, acting as the judge, the defender, the one with the power to remove sin. "I have taken away your iniquity," he declares, a statement that should belong to God alone. The implications are staggering. This being is not a mere messenger. He holds the authority of heaven itself. But if there is only one God, then who is this? Some have argued that this presence is the pre-incarnate Christ, a foreshadowing of Jesus before his earthly birth. It is a theory that aligns with certain Christian interpretations, yet the Hebrew Scriptures never identify him as such. Instead, he exists in a space between clarity and obscurity, wielding divine power, yet never fully revealed. But there is another possibility, one far more unsettling. Could it be that the concept of God as a singular entity is only part of the story? That the earliest scriptures hold an understanding of divinity that was later reshaped, altered, and simplified? If the angel of the Lord is not a mere creation, but a distinct divine being, then we are left with an uncomfortable question. One that threatens the very foundation of monotheism. Is it possible that hidden within the pages of the Bible, there was always more than one God? From the very beginning, God has been called by many names: El Shaddai, Elohim, Yahweh, Adonai, each carrying its own weight, its own authority, its own mystery. But while most believe these names simply reflect different aspects of the same divine being, Scripture suggests something far more unsettling. What if these names were not interchangeable? What if they pointed to something deeper, something hidden? One verse in Exodus shifts the foundation of everything we thought we knew. In Exodus 6:3, God speaks to Moses and declares, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself fully known to them. The statement is striking. If El Shaddai and Yahweh are the same, why would one be hidden from the patriarchs? Why would the God who made a covenant with Abraham not reveal his true name until the time of Moses? The implication is staggering. For generations, the forefathers of faith may have been worshipping a different divine presence altogether. The confusion deepens in Deuteronomy 32:8, a passage that has been quietly debated for centuries. The verse states, "When the Most High Elyon gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he set up the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God." Elyon, the Most High, is described as separate from Yahweh, as if Yahweh is merely one of the divine beings assigned a portion of humanity. If Yahweh was always the one true God, why is he portrayed as a figure receiving dominion rather than bestowing it? The Dead Sea Scrolls confirm that early texts did not say sons of Israel, but sons of God, implying a divine council where different gods ruled over different nations. And this is not an isolated reference. In Psalm 82:1, a chilling scene unfolds. God stands in the divine assembly. He judges among the gods. The passage suggests a hierarchy of divine beings, with Yahweh ruling among them. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If there is only one God, who are the others? Were they mere angels or something more? Traditional theology offers an answer. Many scholars argue that these names and descriptions are not evidence of multiple gods, but progressive revelations of the same divine being. El Shaddai, Elyon, and Yahweh could represent different ways God revealed himself throughout time, rather than separate entities. The divine council, according to monotheistic interpretations, could be a heavenly court of angels, not rival deities. However, if that is true, why does Yahweh explicitly demand exclusive worship in the 10 Commandments? Why does he say, "You shall have no other gods before me"? Exodus 23, rather than simply stating, "There are no other gods"? The answer may lie in the evolution of faith itself. Ancient religions often depicted a supreme deity ruling over lesser gods, each responsible for different realms or nations. Was the concept of Yahweh originally one of many, later reshaped into monotheism? If so, who changed it, and why? Some scholars believe this transformation was deliberate. As Israel's faith evolved, so did its theology. What was once a divine assembly may have been reinterpreted, rewritten to fit the growing belief in a singular, omnipotent ruler. The divine hierarchy was collapsed into one. The other figures were erased. The complexity of God was simplified. But if Yahweh was once one of many, what happened to the others? Were they abandoned? Were they defeated? Or, more disturbingly, are they still out there, hidden in the shadows of Scripture, waiting to be rediscovered? If Yahweh was once one of many, then what happened to the others? Were they forgotten, erased from history? Or was there a struggle, an ancient war between divine beings, a battle that shaped the very fabric of faith itself? The Bible hints at a time when the heavens were not ruled by a single God, but by a divine council, a gathering of powerful beings, each with authority over different nations, realms, and destinies. Deuteronomy 32:8 describes how Elyon, the Most High, divided the nations among the sons of God, granting each their own dominion. Yahweh was given Israel, while others ruled elsewhere. But as history progressed, something changed. A shift occurred, a consolidation of power. The gods of the nations once acknowledged were cast into shadow. Yahweh rose above them all, claiming supremacy, demanding that no other gods be worshipped. You shall have no other gods before me. Exodus 23. This was not a denial of their existence, it was a decree of dominance. The wording is deliberate. No other gods before me implies that others exist, but they must be rejected, silenced, and forgotten. The Old Testament is filled with Yahweh's warnings against these rival deities: Baal, Molech, Asherah, names that were once spoken with reverence, now reduced to false idols. But what if they were not mere idols? What if they were once powerful rulers, now dethroned? What if, instead of being destroyed, some chose exile over extinction? The Book of Psalms gives us another chilling glimpse into this hidden war. Psalm 82 describes Yahweh standing in the assembly of the gods, not as a fellow member, but as their judge. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Psalm 82:2. It is a rebuke, a condemnation. Yahweh is not merely part of this council, he is taking control of it. And then he delivers his final decree. I said, "You are gods, sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere men. You will fall like every other ruler." Psalm 82:6-7. This is a declaration of war. Yahweh is stripping the divine council of their power, casting them down to perish like mortals. The gods of old, the rulers of nations, are being overthrown. This war plays out across the Old Testament. Time and time again, Yahweh's followers are commanded to tear down altars, destroy temples, and wipe out entire cultures that worship these rival deities. The war is not just spiritual, it is physical, political, total. But what if the war was never truly won? Ancient texts outside the Bible hint at a darker fate. Some gods were slain. Others, like the fallen angels of the Book of Enoch, were bound in chains, imprisoned in the depths of the earth, waiting for judgment. Yet others may still roam the world in disguise, influencing history from the shadows. Their power diminished, but not extinguished. Their influence reduced, but not forgotten. And here lies the most terrifying question of all. If Yahweh overthrew the old gods to reign supreme, was he the true ruler all along, or did he simply win the war? If the gods of old are not truly gone, then are they waiting, watching, and if the time comes, will they rise again? The forbidden truth, who hid it and why? If Yahweh's rise to supremacy was the result of a divine war, then why is this history hidden? Why does the Bible not speak openly of this celestial conflict? The answer is both unsettling and inevitable. Someone rewrote the story. Scripture, as we know it, is not a single, unaltered text. It is a collection of writings, edited and compiled over centuries, shaped by those who wielded the power to define what was sacred and what was heretical. The earliest Israelites lived in a world where gods and spirits were not abstract concepts, but real, tangible forces. They did not deny the existence of other deities. Instead, they feared them, opposed them, and at times even worshipped them. Yet, as Israel's identity solidified, so did its theology. What was once a divine assembly became a singular throne. The competing gods of old were recast as demons, as deceivers, as shadows of a world Yahweh had conquered. Their names were erased, their followers condemned, their temples burned to the ground. But fragments remain. In the book of Jeremiah 7:18, the prophet rebukes Israel for honoring the Queen of Heaven, an entity that had been widely worshipped. In Judges 2:13, the Israelites are condemned for turning to Baal and Asherah. These were not simply false idols. At one point in time, they were active deities in the region, accepted as powerful forces. Even Yahweh himself was once worshipped alongside a divine consort, a belief that was later scrubbed from religious doctrine. Traditional scholars argue that these shifts in theology were not deliberate erasures, but divinely guided revelations, i.e., progressive unveiling of truth. They claim that Yahweh's rise to absolute monotheism was not about eliminating other gods, but about revealing that He alone was ever truly God. According to Jewish and Christian interpretations, this transformation was not a rewrite of history, but a correction of human misunderstanding. However, if this is the case, why does history tell a different story? Why do ancient texts, hidden from the mainstream, still hint at a lost reality, one where Yahweh was not alone? The answer may lie in exile. When the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BCE, the Israelites were forced into captivity, stripped of their temple, their identity, and their homeland. It was in this time of crisis that the priests and scribes began reconstructing their faith, redefining Yahweh not as one God among many, but as the only God who had ever existed. It was no longer enough for Yahweh to be supreme. He had to be alone. The old histories were rewritten. The rival gods were transformed into mere idols, powerless and false. The divine council that once stood was collapsed into a single, omnipotent being. The war of the gods was erased. The Taj, conqueror, was made eternal. But history has a way of resurfacing. Forgotten texts are uncovered, ancient myths are revived, and scholars begin to piece together what was lost. Perhaps the gods of old were not destroyed, only silenced. Perhaps their influence, buried beneath layers of rewritten doctrine, never truly vanished. And if that is true, then the world may not be as it seems. The past was reshaped, the future remains unwritten, and the question remains, if history can be rewritten once, can it be rewritten again? The truth that changes everything, the whispers of forgotten gods, the buried remnants of a divine war, the uneasy truth that Yahweh may not have always been alone. All of it leads to one inevitable question. What happens if the veil is lifted? For centuries, faith has been built upon a singular foundation. One God, one truth, one ultimate power. But if history were rewritten, if the gods of old were silenced, then what does that mean for us now? Have we been worshipping a victor rather than a creator? Have we unknowingly followed the last surviving ruler of a war we were never meant to remember? There is one final clue, one hidden in plain sight. Revelation 22:12-13. Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me, to repay each one for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. A declaration of supremacy, a final claim to absolute power. But what if it is not a promise but a warning? What if he is not returning to bring peace, but to ensure that no others remain? The prophecies of the end. Times speak of a great conflict, an ultimate battle between forces beyond human comprehension. For those who believe, it is the final victory of light over darkness. But what if it is something else? What if it is the last war? A war to erase any remnants of the old order, to eliminate every last trace of the gods who were once revered, to finish what was started thousands of years ago. What if the gods who were cast down have never been truly gone? The world is changing. Secrets long buried are rising to the surface. Lost texts resurface. Heretical writings gain new interest. And ancient names once feared begin to be spoken again. The concept of one supreme being is being challenged, not by skeptics but by history itself. And if the war is not over, then what happens when the other side fights back?